Hello, my beautiful friend. Welcome back to another episode of Health Habits and Epic Living. And today I have another epic guest for us joining today. I'm so excited for our conversation. But first, let me introduce our amazing guest, Jessica Dibb. She works on conscious breathing. I'm so eager to ask so many questions around this. She's quite accomplished. She has synthesized psychology and conscious studies, science, individualized spirituality, somatic, emotional, and cognitive energy, and wholeness for supporting others, potential, and growth. She is an author of breathwork and psychotherapy, and she created a course called Breathwork and Psycho-Spiritual Facilitation Program at the Inspiration Consciousness School. And she really helps people develop and cultivate this breathwork and really use it as presence, wisdom, and love throughout our lifespan and in relationship with all of life and this breathing planet. So welcome, Jessica, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Sherry. It is really an honor to be on here with you, and I just really deeply respect all the time and energy you put into bringing this remarkable program to everybody for their health. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so I was sharing with you before we started recording is that you're one of the first I've had on to come and talk about breath work. I know it's an area that I have not explored myself too much. I've done some reading on it and I know the importance of it. So I'm really eager to hear more about how we would define this conscious breathing.
Yeah. Well, let me start out by saying a bodacious statement is that conscious breathing and breath work is the medicine of the people. It really belongs to the people of the planet. And it belongs, by the way, to all living creatures and to the planet, the ecosystem itself, because in one way, there's only one breath. Everything is part of the oxygen cycle and photosynthesis. And I've only been able to find one creature that doesn't participate exactly in that cycle. So breath work as a modality for human beings is a spectrum of breathing practices that spans all the way from just sort of regulation and relaxation exercise, very simple, to awareness and mindfulness kind of practices, to specific therapeutic interventions, like something that addresses asthma or something that addresses other respiratory illnesses like COPD, or something that addresses energy levels or diabetes or focus or inability to sleep. Like there are very specific techniques that can be applied. And then there's techniques on a fourth group that we might describe that are about cultivating the most desirable human qualities and traits. Like, for instance, compassion, the ability to focus, empowerment, loving kindness, serenity and inner peace. There are breathing techniques that will specifically give us a somatic sense of that. And then on the far end of the spectrum, we have what I call human potential breathing practices that are very deep internal, kind of amplifying breath works that allow us to get in touch with our inner landscape, our intrapsychic way that we're orienting towards ourselves and life, and really get to some of our underlying belief, emotions, capacities, and potentials, and really bring them into being, even opening sometimes into expanded states of consciousness.
It's fascinating because as you're talking, my brain is thinking of what it's been exposed to thus far in this realm of breathing. So I know about the box breathing. I know Navy SEALs do that. I know it's a way to calm the nervous system. I know it's a way that you could take a pause, and it's one of the techniques we talk about for reducing anxiety and compulsive drinking behavior inside of one of my programs. So I'm familiar with like box breathing, and then Wim Hof has a method. But what I heard you describe is that there's not just like these three or four. one size kind of fits all or types of breathing patterns that are healing and have some therapeutic potential. But you're really talking about like there's a whole much more that could be explored for specific disease or specific conditions. And can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, in the book, I had to tailor it down. There's probably about 50 different practices, I like to call them, that people can engage in that range all the way from really all the things I talked about, rest and regulation, to these expanded states of consciousness and human potential. So that can give people an idea of like how many different things there are. And I also would say that I think that the breath work of the future, breath workers were in the process of professionalizing the field. And I feel really humbled, honestly, and honored to be the co-director of the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance because we're setting international standards for training and for ethics in breathwork. And I think that the breathworker of the future will have training in all of the dimensions of conscious breathing that I outlined, and then they'll have mastery in at least one of them. And what they'll be able to do is to teach people a variety of things from these different 5 groups of breath work so that a person can actually choose, like, well, right now I need to focus really quickly and I can't work with my emotions. So here's something I can do. Whereas now I'm in this space where I really want to get to the bottom of that emotion that keeps rising up and kind of interrupting my ability to focus. So, or right now I just need a quick reset, so or right now I'm getting a respiratory illness. It feels like I'm on the verge of something. What can I do to maybe interrupt that and restore myself to homeostasis and maybe even prevent the illness or shorten the length of it? So you want people to have this whole toolkit in a way, but ultimately, even what a person can find is what we might call personal resonance. And it's the ability to feel from the inside how my breathing wants to be right now that is going to bring me kind of an ultimate sort of state of presence and integration. And just presence, I might even say, because some people think that's about almost like meditating and removing yourself from what's happening out here and just being present. It becomes like another kind of mask in a way. But what I mean by being present is how can we meet each moment of life with all of its ups and all of its downs, the triumphs, the tragedies, the pleasure, the pain, the whatever it may be? How can we stay present with each of those things and optimize our response to them? That's really how I would define the gift of presence. And presence is a somatic, emotional, and cognitive alignment in the present moment with focus. And then you can respond optimally to whatever is happening to you. So the idea that people would know kind of a variety of specific techniques, but even more importantly, is be so at that point tuned into their breathing that they could kind of know what they needed to do in each moment to be present to whatever is the situation. What kind of breathing? How do I just adjust my breath? No particular technique, but a kind of fluency, if you will, in their own breathing.
So I'm sitting here thinking about breath and the factors you can control, right? Like the inhale, the hold, the exhale, the pace that you breathe, right? Whether it's fast or slow. Can you elaborate on any more of like the
Sure.
structure and when you do these practices and one engages like the steps inside of your book? When you say you're practicing this, is this like once a day? Is this 5 minutes a day? Is this multiple times throughout the day? Like, how are they used therapeutically?
Beautiful question. So, in the book, I did want people, especially if they're either beginning with breath work or if they're going to use it therapeutically, or if they've already been doing a lot of breath work, but they want to maximize what breathwork can do for them. I actually wrote one chapter that's 11 techniques, and I make a recommend that cover the whole sort of body, mind, spirit, or we might say somatic, emotional, cognitive, spiritual continuum. and I make a recommendation for this many minutes a day, and the whole thing turns out to be 35 minutes if you do each of those for a few minutes all at one sitting. So that would be similar to somebody, let's say, meditating once a day or exercising. Now you're just having a breath work practice that's about 35 minutes and really works on all of those parts of yourself. And then I would say that you'll know throughout the day something you're experiencing. Let's say you have a shock, which in today's culture is not so hard to come by. We all have, I think, multiple shocks, sometimes every day. Or that somebody gets angry at you and you feel, adrenaline arise, or you're feeling really tired and you need to focus on a particular project, or you need to focus on your children that need you, or, a companion animal. So then you would know like a specific thing that you can do. And sometimes it's as simple as really just deepening the breath, letting the diaphragm have more room to do its thing. And a lot of times the simplest thing we can do, and it starts to create an immediate state change, is breathing in a little more deeply and relaxing the exhale, just letting that exhale go. That a lot of times when we're having any kind of difficulty, it's because we're now imbalanced. That sympathetic nervous system is overriding the balance that's supposed to be between parasympathetic and sympathetic. And you can reset that pretty easily just in the way I said, just literally by just breathe in a little deeper, make a little more room for the diaphragm. We can talk about how to do that. And then on the exhale, just kind of let it go and relax. And within 3 breaths, most people are feeling a difference already. So I would say if you can, dedicate yourself to some kind of focused practice, I would say a minimum of 7 minutes a day of some kind of conscious breathing. But if you want to do this toolkit of 35 minutes a day, that would be excellent. And then just have in your awareness that you can use breath work throughout the day to invite yourself to be present with whatever's happening.
Interesting. May I give you a scenario and see if there would be a way to implement a breathwork practice that would help one, meaning in this scenario myself, regulate more in my body rather than to want to change the circumstances or exit my body or exit the situation. So I notice my nervous system gets activated when people are in disagreement around me. So maybe it's not so much they disagree with me. I think I can handle that okay. But it's like when there's yelling or raised voices around me, and it could be like I'm a middle child, I'm the peacemaker of the family, right? I wanted everybody to get along. So when there's like this discord or distension, and particularly if voices are raised, so say it's like my husband and my daughter like arguing, and I'm not part of that. But then I notice I want to jump in and do a solution or get involved when it's really not my area to get involved. It's not between me. Either I'll want to jump in and save the day or like calm everybody down, or I'll need to leave the kitchen or wherever it's happening because I just don't enjoy that type of disagreement happening around me and feeling like I can't do anything about it. I don't know if either of those are well to do, but what if I was to stay in that kitchen, stay in that moment and kind of reset my nervous system for me and just watch this play out rather than feeling like I have to come in and intervene? Is there a breathwork practice that would help me like feel safe in my body or just stay present without being triggered or activated?
Yes, thank you. That's a wonderful question. I'm sure it's going to be incredibly useful to your listeners. So there's a few things that I would say. First is, and this really is part of breath work in terms of that fourth category I was talking about developing those desirable human traits like, compassion and attunement and strength and all those kinds of things. The first thing is I would want to acknowledge that young person in you that was maybe I have a sister who was a middle sister too, and same thing. I mean, and she's really beautiful and so good at it, and it really has felt like a mission almost, and she's had to work out of it. But I would want to honor the beauty of that. Like rather than just look at the dysfunction of it, to see the beauty of your heart in wanting to do that. Like, that's a lot of love and that's a lot of caring. So one thing that you could do is, like, take a moment to actually go back to when you were younger and you felt that, and invite at an inner level, like an inner visualization, that younger girl to breathe deeply. It's
Mm.
really powerful to do that because a lot of times we can have a conscious intention to change our breathing here, but our cellular memory, our muscle memory is breathing the way we did in the past. And so there'll be like a tension there and people will feel their breath catch. So you could invite that younger part of yourself. You could say to her, that's so beautiful that you want to do that. And it's okay to breathe now, breathe safely and breathe and know that you're a very noble, beautiful person. That can really make a difference. You would be surprised. Secondly, I'm going to tell you what you can do by staying in the room, but I want to say that, first of all, it's really okay as you're building your capacity to this to first take yourself out of the room, breathe for a few minutes, and then go back into the room with that regulated breathing. That's what I tell people. The first step might be that. Okay. Now, what is the kind of breathing that you're going to do that's going to make the most difference? Well, there's three things I think that I would offer right now. One is we can make the shift from, so often people say, take a deep breath. But the one who's taking a deep breath is going to is in some distress usually, and they also, how should I say it? It's like whatever is ailing them, like a fear or an anger or an anxiety or whatever, that's the one that's gonna be taking a deep breath. There's something really powerful about realizing that we're being breathed all the time, that we don't have to even put any of our conscious volitional energy and we're just being breathed. Now, for some people, that's an intensely spiritual recognition. And for others, it's just kind of like, wow, isn't that interesting? I can conserve my energy. If I get that I'm being breathed and I just sort of let go and let myself be breathed deeper instead of resisting it, that can bring a profound spiritual, emotional, and physiological change. So that's the first thing in terms of shifting the breathing, is just to recognize when you're activated, wait a minute, I'm being breathed. Okay. And just like kind of deepen that way. Second thing is box breathing is incredibly effective, and Navy SEALs and others do use it. It's a wonderful technique. And there was a study that came out of Stanford at the end of 2023. The principal investigators were Dr. Spiegel and Dr. Huberman, and then there was a bunch of other people. And they compared box breathing with cyclical hyperventilation, which is kind of what Wim Hof does, and which is a faster breathing. And then you kind of slow it down for a moment and do a deep breath. And it's very activating and energizing. And then they compared this other kind of breathing, which I'm going to show you in a moment. And they found that in terms of reducing anxiety and, much to their surprise, elevating mood, that the third kind of breathing worked better than even box breathing or cyclical hyperventilation, and that if people did it 5 minutes a day for 28 days, they really, showed profound shifting in their baseline anxiety level, and their baseline mood was elevated. So I would say that the second you could receive breathing, then the second thing would be this technique that goes like this. You breathe in through the nose deeply, but not like straining. And then when it feels like you've taken in that breath, you take in another little sip of breath before you start to breathe out. And when you breathe out, you just breathe out through the mouth and sigh. So it would be something like this. So it's two segments to the breathing, through the nose, if possible, and then out through the mouth. So for 5 minutes, that will really change your anxiety state.
I've heard Dr. Huberman talk about this on his podcast
Yeah.
numerous times.
Yes, exactly. Now, the third thing to know, and this is more the ultimate thing. So, once you've learned to receive breathing so that your breath work isn't about, I'm going to do this, but it's about, okay, I'm already being breathed. Now, how do I deepen that? How do I flow with that? Or doing this technique that we were just talking about. So, in addition to that, receiving breathing and then using this very specific technique, whether you go out of the room first for a few minutes and come back, or whether you're able to do it in the room. Ultimately, the healthiest breathing and the most regulating breathing for us, and definitely the most empowering in terms of presence, has to do with the ratio of breathing, which is another thing that we can affect, meaning how long are we breathing in and how long are we breathing out? Now, in box breathing, we breathe in for a certain count, hold for that same amount, breathe out for that same amount, and then hold. What we have found is that the most regulating breathing for any individual is a completely equivalent inhale to exhale. So it would be like you breathe in 5 and then you breathe out 5. And that's where the personal resonance comes in. There's something called coherent breathing, founded by Stephen Elliott, very popularized 5 to 6 breaths per minute. He actually does it at 5.2 because that's the average for most people of what is going to regulate them. But in fact, the range is anywhere from 4 to 7 or 8. And with really advanced breathers, they might even want to do 2 breaths per minute. And some children, for instance, would likely want to do 10 breaths per minute. But the idea is for you to start to find a breathing rate that feels like it's optimizing the way you feel. So I would say, first thing is receive the breath, then interrupt whatever anxiety pattern or tension pattern by that breathing that Dr. Huberman talks about, that I talked about. And then see if you can start to regulate your breath so you're breathing in and out the same amount of time.
What if you know that you hold tension in a certain area? Like I notice I have a lot of tension in where my jaw meets in the back here. And I think a lot of women will tell me like they feel a lot of pressure. I don't know if we're just biting down or people, need mouth guards as they age too, because they start grinding their teeth. And I think that's where a lot of us carry our stress is in the back here by our teeth and our jaw. Not like TMJ, not that severe, but a tightness. Is there a breathing technique that can work in that area?
Sure. And I would also gently offer that my experience psychophysiologically is that women don't speak enough of what they really feel or think because they're always trying to make sure everybody else is okay. So they kind of clamp down. And I think that's where some of that comes from. A lot of times I have seen women heal this whole thing just by doing a deep breathwork session, the kind I was talking about human potential, and kind of like getting out what they needed to say, and then feeling like, or even yelling what they needed to say, and then inviting themselves in everyday life to take that risk. And a lot of times the tension will melt away. But you're right, it's also can just be that they're girding themselves to like keep on doing whatever they have to do. So I would say again, there's going to always be with almost anything, it's not a one size fits all, as you've already said. It's really about, we're all individuals. So which of these things is going to work? But one of them is there's a yoga pose that's called lion pose, where you actually just go like you're roaring. And so you can do that with your breathing. You can breathe in deeply, which is always going to help. And then when you breathe out, you can go, and that really invites this. Again, it interrupts the pattern. Anything that interrupts the pattern with consciousness, not like an interrupted in an unconscious way, but will make a difference. You can also, because we know that muscle memory is a real thing now, if you breathe deeply and send the breath, in your awareness to that part of your body and invite that part of your body on the exhale to let go, it does make a difference. The other thing that you can do is a lot of times this part of the body isn't getting oxygen because it's so tense. So you can, in your awareness, actually say to that part of your body, again, it's part of the muscle memory thing, it's okay to breathe. And you invite it to breathe with you. because it probably hasn't been breathing very well. So those are some of the things that you can do. Now you can also do very fast breathing, like we might call it Kundalini breathing or Bhastrika or Kapalabhati, but you don't need to know a name. You could just do, you could breathe very fast for like 10 breaths, like, and then, and rub this area and then let go. And then do it again. I would say even only do 5, especially if there's tension here. 10 is probably too much. So just to do like 5 deep breaths, fast deep breaths, and then rub this and breathe out very slowly.
Mm.
And so try all of those different things and see what works, because it could be that it's very emotionally derived. It could be that it's become a physiological habit, but we do know that every breath is psychophysiological. It always has an emotional component and it always has a physiological component. And it's kind of like whatever will get in for you the easiest would be great.
Yeah, I've been really trying to work this area. And something I did last week was have this amazing massage where they actually go with gloves on the inside of your mouth all the way to the back and start massaging the muscle to, I can't really say it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't comfortable, right? And pulling away my cheek from my jaw because she was like, "You are so tight back in here." So very interesting that that modality I just came across from a friend had recommended it, and it felt amazing. And she also mentioned humming might be able
Yep.
to move some of that energy out. So I've been humming in the mornings a little bit just to see if I can dislodge some of that emotional energy that's I feel stored or stuck there.
Exactly. So now what you could do, I mean, that kind of therapy now has many different names. Many years ago, one of the first pioneers of that was Ida Rolf, and it was called Rolfing. And then, and people would even talk about, because you would get the muscles that were adhering to other muscles and you'd separate them. And it could sometimes be painful, but ultimately people felt better. Now there's been an evolution of these techniques, these very deep tissue kinds of things that can even go into, place like even in the ears, the mouth, and just deep into the muscles. And so if you added to that now conscious breathing, like if when
Mm.
she's working on that, you invited all those cells that are getting worked on to now be able to breathe. And you might even have an emotional release, like things that you hadn't said or things, habits that started when you were much younger. You might have a memory, or you might just feel a little sad or like, kind of shaking with excitement of the opening up. And I'm sure that kind of therapist is, schooled in knowing how to let you release your emotion, but the breathing will really amplify the effect.
Interesting. So interesting. Yeah, as I learn more and more about these different modalities and the way the body just hangs on to stories, stored trauma, emotions from when we were young where we didn't feel safe or seen or validated, and how I wasn't aware of that for so many years, decades. I just kept my head down, kept pursuing, kept achieving. And I don't know if it's this phase of my life now or just that I'm more open to this kind of work and these different modalities that I'm starting to notice my body has some stored story and stored emotions that are causing a little bit more discomfort than what I've noticed in the past. Yeah, working with these different modalities is really like layering, right? You pull back one layer and you find something or you experience something, or it's almost like my body's guiding me to like, oh, we're ready for this level to be released. So I'm going to make this part of your body a little bit more painful so that you address it so that we can release it.
Yeah, Sherry, that was a really wonderful description that you just gave about the kind of how the process goes. And it's somatic wisdom. And I think that sadly, in our culture, we have prioritized cognitive wisdom over emotional wisdom in the heart and somatic or body wisdom. Animals that, like when a tsunami's coming and their body knows to like go up to the hills, that's somatic wisdom. And we've lost, like people used to know, like, here's what's going to happen weather wise through their bodies, And the more that we've evolved cognitively, which has its wonders, of course, and it's beautiful, but when it's out of balance, as it is in this culture, we're very production oriented. We've lost a lot of the emotional somatic wisdom. And what you're describing when you say that you're trusting your body now, it's kind of guiding you. It does, it knows things to do. And breathing is the central, like when we come in, we breathe. When we leave, we do our last breath. It's the unifying medicine and nutrient of our lives. And I think that with the understanding of breath work starting to expand and proliferate, we're going to find that this is humanity's greatest medicine because everybody has it and everybody has access to it and everybody is nourished by it and can develop themselves through it. So you add it to any other modality you're doing, and it's just going to amplify the results.
Yeah, you're right. It's like your body's innate wisdom, like if you're in danger, right? What happens to your breath? It immediately goes up. You go into that sympathetic. Your body already knows what to do, right? Start running, get more air. So it starts breathing quicker. And sometimes when I have multiple ways or multiple choices to make about a decision, if I just stick with my cognitive brain, I've been trained to do the pro con list. But you can always kind of tell when, even though the pros might be really long for choice one and really short for choice two and more cons, but your body's like, but I really feel like doing choice two. There's something there. I think that slowing down the breath to really get to that wisdom, that, higher self. I know a lot of women will say that around drinking, like, I know I should be drinking less. And my higher wisdom is telling me I should be drinking less. But like this other part of me is like, oh, just go for the quick fix and let's just have more. But when you really slow down the breath and really attune to yourself, it can override the cognitive and it might turn out, and most times does, to be the better choice.
Yeah, beautifully said. And one of the ways that people can develop the capacity that you're talking about is to realize that when we breathe in, the first thing that needs to happen, right under our rib cage is that beautiful diaphragm in a dome when it's relaxed, when you just breathed out. When we breathe in, it wants to move down like this, which helps pull the air in like a vacuum. And then it goes back up during the exhale. So when we inhale, if we relax our belly so that we're giving, and I usually have people feel along the bottom of their rib cage that adherence that you were talking about in the mouth. Same thing here with the diaphragm. A lot of times, just gently, not to any discomfort, sort of working your fingers along the bottom of each side of your rib cage and massaging where there's tension and kind of loosening up so the diaphragm has maximum flexibility. And then when you breathe in, you're aware of your belly, you relax it, then you allow your rib cage and your chest to rise. And then you become aware of how that breathing is supporting you. And that is a kind of somatic cue of the body, heart, head.
Mm.
So if you breathe that way, and then you consider these things like you were talking about, like I have this choice or this choice. If you cultivate this way of breathing, you're going to have more trust of that deeper intuition than just the pro con list.
Yeah, yeah, and it's beautiful because you feel guided. You almost feel like there's an inner knowing that guides you when
There
when
is.
when you allow that process to take place and
Yeah.
unfold.
One quick thing that I was going to say is when people describe flow states, where they get so in the moment with something they're doing, like skiing or surfing or doing the stock market or writing. It happens to writers after they get through that initial thing, or just you can be in a state of flow, just taking a hike or meditating. The wonderful thing about that state of flow is that you do have the sense that there's something inside that absolutely knows what you need to be doing. That's why people are able to do these things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And breathing is something that can help us get into the flow state. And rather than an activity like skiing that has to stop or whatever, the thing is that breathing continues. So I would just want to say to everybody, If you really start to have a conscious relationship with your breathing, you're going to not only be able to access flow states more often, but you'll be able to keep them going longer because you never stop breathing, right? You're always breathing. So then you go into the kitchen and you're still breathing deeply, and you've got a whole different relationship to preparing dinner than you had, before, because something different is happening than the anxiety or the rush or the worry that you're not gonna do it right. It opens up a way of seeing the beauty of the food and feeling the beauty of you preparing the food and maybe creatively doing something different with the food than you would have done before.
Yeah, it's almost like the relationship with the breath signifies the relationship with self. And when you enjoy that relationship of breath, you enjoy the relationship of self, and therefore do not need so much outside of us because we already feel full, whole, and content within.
That
Mm.
was a very beautiful, nourishing thing for you to say to every.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. Jessica, if people are interested in working with you, or even if you want to say, is there organization, or if they do want to find a breathwork person who's very knowledgeable in all these different modalities, not just one or two, but all these different beautiful modalities for therapeutic reasons, anywhere you can send my listeners to.
Sure. Well, the website that you can contact me through is Inspiration Community, all one word, inspirationcommunity.org. My actual email is essence@inspirationcommunity.org, and we would be so happy. We have about 20 practitioners that I've trained myself. So if you want to work with somebody online, if you're at a distance or if you're on the East Coast and you might want to work in person, we can find somebody good for you. I'm also the co-director of the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance, and we keep a directory of people that have adhered to certain training standards and commit to ethical practice. And so that website is breathworkalliance.com. And so those are two ways that you can contact me and or start to get connected with a breath worker.
Fantastic. And listeners, we will put all those links inside of the show notes. Also on my YouTube channel, we'll have all those links available in case you want to check any of those out. Jessica, this has been wild to learn about how our breath can really transform our emotional state and our being and create more wisdom, health, and well being in our life. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us.
It's been a true joy, Sherry. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Health Habits and Epic Living podcast. If you're ready to take the next step to improve your health, wellness, and lifestyle goals, head over to www.epicu.com and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Again, that's EPICYOU.com. Please note that the information in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice.